Auntie, shush. Let's see if anybody finds this. They might not. Hi, thank you. Sorry, I had to start a new one because the other one booted me out and would not let me back in. So as much as I hate that, and it's like annoying when that happens, I tried to say in the chat what happened. So hopefully I got some of you back. What's up, King? Cool name. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Is my retouch? There we go. Gotta keep my retouch on. Looking a little wacky. I'm getting ready for this live podcast, so I'm only going to be chatting for like 6 more minutes before the recording starts. And then I will not be participating in the chat, but I will let you guys on the behind the scenes, you know, if you want to be watching the podcast as I record it, just know I will not be able to respond to the chat, but you guys will be able to hear the conversation, little behind the scenes. And if you have to leave at any point, just know that the full episode will be released probably like next week or something. So if you're into that kind of thing, hopefully you stick around. Hopefully you like it. Oh yeah, you guys were talking about, we're going to be talking about AI, because he works with AI. Thanks, Jason. Just so everyone is clear, for those of you who are new here, I'm a comedian and podcaster. I publish 2 podcasts every single week on Mondays and Thursdays, new episodes with all sorts of different guests, so there should be something for everybody. I talk to a lot of comedians, and then I talk to people who are like experts in mental health and wellness, all sorts of different topics. I've had a really, really wide variety of guests on, so there should be something for everybody. So if you are a comedy and podcasting fan, I think that hopefully you can find something on the channel that you like. Yeah, trying to get comfortable here. Let me turn my Do Not Disturb on. Thank you for sending me sparkles. Okay. Wait. Hit my Do Not Disturb. Hit my thing so that nobody calls me during. And yeah, how cool. Thanks for being here. Hopefully you enjoy watching me record a podcast live. This one's not in person. This one I'm doing on Riverside FM. All right. Okie dokie. I don't know if anybody here uses Riverside FM. It's not the best. For how much I pay for it, it's kind of annoying that it's not better. It's like $29 a month for this fucking horse shit. And then it's always like slow, and it's always it's just not my favorite. Anyways, gotta set this shit up. I may not, if the connection is not going well, I'll probably get out of here. But let's see. Thank you for subbing, Will. I appreciate that. Trying to get this situated for the next recording, which is starting shortly. Again, this is about to be with a behavioral scientist, so if you guys are into that, that is what the next hour is going to be about. I'm not going to be responsive in the chat because I have to be responsive in the conversation. I am a podcast host first and a streamer second, so this is the behind the scenes. If you're into it, great. Please go ahead and, enjoy the recording. If you're not, no worries, no troubles. If you're not into it, it's not your thing. I am not offended. Go find something else that you like better. Because we're going to be talking about AI and behavioral science. All right. Where's my schedule? Setting this up. All right, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. King of the Earth, sorry. Smart camera, there we go. It's all wonky. All right, got my audio. Just waiting for it to start now. Hi, you guys are back. Oh. It's not that, we're not going to be that in depth about AI. We're kind of talking about like the cognitive impact more so than that, but I appreciate what you're saying. Thank you for your input. It's not quite that kind of AI conversation. It's more about like the impact of people using it for therapy and stuff. I can't watch football. I'm about to podcast. I gotta do my roots. Okie dokie. Soon we're gonna start. I'm not gonna be able to be super responsive in the chat, guys. Waiting for this podcast to start. So if you want to watch it, great, and talk amongst yourselves. I appreciate that. If not, I won't be offended if you scroll away, because it's just going to be podcasting for the next hour. I should have curled this, but it's okay. I can't afford Coke, Vin Fubu. Maybe you want to send me some money. If you got Coke money, feel free to send a tip or join the membership. It's very cheap and there's extra content on there. Okay, bye. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
I'm excited we could get this done. Quick turn. This is maybe my quickest turnaround.
Quick turn. I know, it's amazing. We're booked out until January on
Wow.
one of my podcasts. So
oh my goodness.
Yeah, so this is really crazy. But it's all good. All good.
Awesome. I'm excited to chat. Did you have any questions for me before I hit record?
No, I think we were covering it the other day, so I think it's all good.
Awesome. So it'll count us down. I'll welcome you into the show, and then we'll get cracking.
Sounds great.
Kurt, welcome to Podcastina.
No, I am excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Excited to have you. Do you mind if we just start with a little bit on your background, what it is you do?
Sure. I am a behavioral scientist, so I try to understand why people behave the way they do, looking at a variety of different psychology, social psychology, economics, etc., and just trying to understand how we think and why we behave in the manner that we do. So that's my basic background. I have a company called the Lantern Group. We have a subsidiary called Behavior Shift. Both of those bring behavioral science into either organizations or into consumer products. And then I have a couple podcasts on the side, but that's my life.
For someone that is not familiar with behavioral science, studying it, what are the applications?
So I work with it mostly within organizations and within behavior change. So, uh, looking at organizations, trying to say, okay, how are people behaving inside of the organization, and trying to understand what is driving those different behaviors, what's driving the way that the people are thinking, and then putting systems and processes in place in order to help improve that or make that better for people. And same thing on the behavior side, on the consumer side, is helping people to, all right, if I want to set goals for myself, but I realize that I set goals all the time, but I never achieve them. Well, why is that? Trying to understand what is it that is driving that lack. I have the will, I want this. I really want to achieve this, but I just can't seem to go about doing it. So behavioral science can help kind of peel back the layers and say, here might be some of the reasons why. Let's figure out how to do that.
You mentioned willpower. What's a common misconception about willpower that people have?
Well, willpower is a fantastic thing, right? And it is a actual component in there. Now, there's been some research that, for a long time, people felt like, hey, if I wanted to achieve something, I just needed to try harder. I needed to have more willpower in order to do that. And there's been research by Roy Baumeister and a couple others who talk about willpower as a muscle, and that you can train willpower so you can improve it. If you restrict yourself a little bit, then you can restrict yourself further as you move forward in the future. And there's some element to that. It's kind of like a muscle to a certain degree, but like a muscle, it also decreases. But that's a good metaphor, but it's also a limited metaphor because you can only build that muscle so much. So when we think about behavior change, when we think about why we are behaving the way that we do, oftentimes there's contextual things that are more important than willpower. The environment that I'm in, the identity that I have about myself. And so, for instance, if I'm trying to lose weight, or maybe, just maybe not snack as much, it's really hard if at the end of the day I'm going down and I open up the cupboard and I look inside and there's the Oreos that I just love, right? And they're staring me in the face. Well, my willpower, I can hopefully enact that, but it'd be much easier if those Oreos were maybe down in the basement. And so I could still have an Oreo if I so desired it, but by just opening up the cupboard in my kitchen, it's not staring me in the face, and then I have to have that willpower to go and resist it. So that's part of the kind of things around willpower that people kind of misconstrue.
So, willpower for when we don't want to do something is to maybe make the thing that we don't want to do less accessible. On the flip side of that, if we want to do something, like let's say new habit formation, maybe instead of not eating Oreos, maybe I want to cook more chicken breasts so I can have clean protein. What is the flip side of making yourself do a task that you don't want to do?
So one of the best ways that I've ever heard this explained is make the bad task hard and make the easy task, or the good task easy. Sorry, I got that confused there. Make the bad task hard and make the good task easier. So if you're wanting to do chicken breast, right, that you can make that, so have that chicken breast readily available. Make sure that you have recipes for that are out. Maybe you're planning the week and you have those already set up for you to do. You can, make sure that you have certain reminders that are going to prime you to say, hey, yeah, that's going to be well. And you can also, work on like your self-talk and go, I am a person who likes to eat healthy. That's me. I am a healthy eater. And so your identity becomes that, as opposed to just, trying to depend on willpower. One of the rest, I was in a workshop one time, and one person was talking about, they would come home and they wanted to learn how to play guitar. And, but they'd come home at the end of the day and the guitar was in the bedroom. And so what they'd sit down on the couch and they'd cook on the TV, and then, a couple hours later, this was a long time ago, back when people watched TV, right? And then they would just watch TV, and then it would be too late, and then they'd have to cook and get ready for the next day. And so they just never got around to playing guitar. What they did is they actually moved the television into a spare room and brought their guitar out next to the couch. So they would come home, they'd still be tired and exhausted after work, but they'd sit down on the couch, but there's no TV to turn on, but there's a guitar right next to them. So what would they end up doing? They'd pick up the guitar and they'd just practice, or they'd play it. They just kind of strum along, and then they'd start, practicing. So that actually worked for them. So you can really set up your environment for success on some of those things.
That's good. It's, I guess, intuitive that setting up the environment to help you succeed is a huge portion of that, removing the obstacles. How important would you say, like, a self-imposed reward system is when we have to do something hard?
This is a really interesting component. I mean, there are actual apps out there. One is called Stick, where you can, pledge certain amount of money to either make sure that you're doing something or not doing something, and there's a whole system around it. You can do that. That can help, and it can definitely jumpstart you in a change process. There's also, temptation bundling. Katie Milkman wrote about this, where what she talks about is what she would only listen to her audiobook when she was at the gym. She kind of created this, all right, I need to go to the gym in order to do something that I really like to do. And that is actually a powerful way to start something. And one of the things that we know about habit formation is that the more you do something, the more likely it is to be repeated. And if you can set up some of those consistencies and, it's the same place, same time, same triggers as you're moving forward through it, that helps. And so by having a reward with that, having an incentive around that, that can be powerful. So I don't necessarily like depending upon those all of the time. Even we design these in work situations, and there can be, ramifications where that incentive becomes less of an incentive over time. And so you have to keep ramping the incentive up, and that isn't necessarily a long-term success, kind of path.
That's interesting. Is it because if then you remove the reward, you might not continue the behavior that was incentivized by the reward?
So there's some real interesting research. So the DC and Ryan had done some thing about that very thing, that you would actually decrease your intrinsic motivation to do something by putting an extrinsic reward on it. And what they found, and they did a lot of studies with kids, is kids would be playing with games, and then they would, pay them to play with games or incent them somehow with food or candy, something. And then they would watch them in their free time after kind of the experiment was done. And after they incented them, they actually played with them less. So that, there's different pieces of that. That was replicated a number of different times, but there has been recent research which shows that there is an immediate withdrawal on whatever that activity is, but that doesn't necessarily continue. And particularly if whatever the activity that you're incenting yourself to do, if it shows some sense of mastery, in other words, like when we think about this in organizational perspectives, if it's a sales incentive or something to get you, then you can see like, hey, I'm progressing, I'm making more sales, doing different things, I'm getting paid for it, fantastic. You take that incentive away, yeah, that goes down. But then over time, it comes back up, and actually it can be at an increased value over what it is. So there's conflicting kind of research on that at this point. But my personal take on this, and this is just my personal take, is that I think there is value in that incentivizing, and it doesn't necessarily decrease your intrinsic motivation in the long run. It actually can help you understand what you need to do. So it gives you the toolkit, basically, for you to be able to do whatever that behavior is, and you understand how to do it better. So I'm in favor of them. There is this element of acclimation to it, an incentive, so that it doesn't have the same kind of motivational pull that it did at the beginning. Again, if I love ice cream, but if I had to eat ice cream every single day, it probably doesn't have the same, motivation for me to do that.
Well, that I can't relate to because I will eat ice cream every day.
All right, so that was a fake one because I would too. But I'd probably eat it every meal for every day, and
Fair.
even then I'd probably be okay.
What I'd love to hear about, because I think people who consider themselves intelligent, who are intelligent people, still will fall down the rabbit hole of destructive decisions. If someone understands perfectly well, in theory, all of these things that we've talked about to this point, why is it that smart people still make destructive choices?
So Danny Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning behavioral scientist, uh, talked about this because somebody said, "Well, obviously you know all about all of these things, so you don't do any of them, right?" He's like, "No." He goes, "I do all of them. Knowing about them doesn't change the fact that I still do them, because most of these, or a lot of these, not." We'll say most, right? Are There's a part of them that work at a subconscious level. And so they're not necessarily in a conscious part where you're going, oh, I'm going to decide to do X when Y happens. So we just innately do that. It is an automatic response. And you can put some systems in various different things in order to change that. But that's the thing, just knowing about them, understanding that these aspects are working on us does not make it so that I'm automatically better at, resisting that temptation for those Oreos, or making sure that I do that workout, or I eat the chicken breast instead of, that hamburger or whatever else it is. So.
The knowledge part doesn't erase the humanity part, no matter how hard we try.
And I think that's a really great way of putting it, right? That we are humans, and as humans, we have our fouls. So there you go.
I'm curious when and why you started using your behavioral science knowledge to look into what's going on with us as AI has been on the rise.
It came about because I had a client, and the client was telling me the story where a person came, a new person, fantastic, right? There's a global organization, new person in Japan. This was a learning and development department within this large multinational company, and they were trying to be helpful. And what they did is they took this U.S. standard operations procedures document, which 90 pages, ran it through AI, and they came up with this global operating procedure standard. And everybody goes, oh, wow, this person's only been in the job a few months. Then they came up with this thing that we've been working on for years, or trying to get done for years. It got elevated all the way up to like senior level executives. And then like my client, who was one of the learning and development people, looked at it and said, yeah, on the surface it looks really good, but this won't work. It doesn't have any real meat to it. It doesn't take into account all the nuances of the difference between, what's going on in China and versus Germany versus South America, and all sorts of different dynamics. And that's a concept called work swap. And so he asked, like, what's going on, Kurt? Why, is this thing, why did we accept it? We didn't, it didn't even like get really examined. It was just kind of raised up and all of this other thing. So that was the impetus. And then once I started looking into it, there's a whole bunch of research, and I've talked with many of my other clients, and there's all sorts of different unintended consequences that are happening with AI use that I think are really kind of concerning to a certain degree.
Oh, absolutely. And I like snickered a little because I had never really even used to hear the word slop, and now it's become synonymous with AI, and now we're calling things out. But I'm actually happy as a person who is a little bit like, I've always been resistant to tech. Like, I'm never the first one in line to get the new iPhone or the new gadget, whatever. I just kind of accept things because I feel it's necessary. By the time it gets to me, it's like, well, it would be crazy not to use it. So I kind of have felt like this resistance with AI because I think like the uncanny valley thing sets in, and you hear all the scary stories, and then it just intuitively to me feels like something that we need to be so careful of. Even though we can't walk it back now, we have it, it's here to stay. But I do want people to like approach it with such caution. So I'm glad we're about to dive into why people need to be cautious with it. Do you believe technology in general, something like AI, is it making us better at making decisions or no?
Oh, that's a tough decision. That's a tough question. In certain sense, yes. So again, as you talked about, it's out there. It's not going away, and it's out there, and it's being adopted as quickly as it is because it does do some amazing things. And so, if we use it correctly, it can definitely help us in making decisions. It can be a brainstorming partner. It can push back on us. The problem is that oftentimes we're not thinking about it in that way, and we're just using it. And what AI does really, really well is it creates fluent answers almost in our own voice. So we can ask it a question that we don't know anything about, and it comes back with a very, very quickly, with a very fluid, very like sophisticated answer that sounds really good, and it almost sounds like us. And so we start kind of offloading our cognitive thinking to it. And that's something that we've done all the time ever since writing has been around. I mean, we don't have to remember things because we can write them down on a list. I don't have to remember everything I need to go to the grocery store because I have a pen and paper and I can write that down and take it with me. That's cognitive offloading. Where the difficulty and some of the danger comes is, well, twofold. One is when it becomes what's called cognitive surrender. So there's some recent research out there that talks about where what we end up doing is we just kind of surrender our thinking and our decision making over to AI. And when that happens, even when we get like extensive use of AI in kind of some of those brainstorming or thinking or decision making types of decisions, that our critical thinking skills decrease. So thinking isn't something that is just something that happens. It's not a book that we get to put on a shelf in our brain somewhere and then we come back to that time when we need it and we can pull that book off. It needs to be exercised. Again, we talked about willpower earlier, right? And kind of that muscle example. Thinking is the same way. And real thinking happens deep thinking happens when we're struggling, when we have some friction and it's the white page of trying to start to write something and I don't have any clue as to how I'm going to say it or write it. It's so easy to just take that and send it and put it into AI. But by doing that, I end up not allowing my brain to be uncomfortable, to sit with that, uncertainty of what am I going to put on that page. And that's actually working my brain, making it stronger, making it better. And so that was a long answer to your very nice question.
Well, it makes sense from like an evolutionary biology standpoint where just our meat sack that we are is designed to preserve calories and energy and for survival and reproduction only, right? Like it doesn't move beyond that quickly enough to catch up with all the other stuff going on around us. So it makes sense that from Evo that like if you find a way to use less energy in your brain, which uses a lot of calories, that your brain is going to go, okay, less calories, less work now, and it just will naturally like atrophy. So it makes sense that we have to fight it. So I'm thinking, I guess maybe the levels, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be like using AI, like good, safe green light would be cognitive offload, and then maybe yellow danger, think about what you're doing, like cognitive crutch, and then maybe like red light, oh my god, this is now dangerous and changing you for the worst, would be what you're saying is cognitive surrender.
Yeah. I mean, that's a wonderful way of thinking about it. And you can use AI. I mean, it's a fantastic editor. So if I, again, using that white page example, I've written something, I can now run it through AI, say, hey, check this for grammar, check it, for consistency, make sure, and it does a fantastic job, and I don't have to pay an editor in order to do that. I can also use it if I have an idea and I want to like go back and forth. The one thing is AI is very good at saying the things that we want to hear. And so you have to make sure that it isn't just agreeing with you and being sympathetic, from that perspective. And then you're going, oh, this is fantastic. Look how bright and smart I am and all of those things. And so, making sure that you're doing that. And then even just going after whatever you get out from AI and making sure that you look at it with a skeptical eye, that you are exploring it. Again, that example that I used from, the new hire that company had that made that global operating procedure. The problem is that she didn't have the knowledge base, that background to understand the nuances. And that's the problem where we get into is, do we have enough information to be even able to know if we should be skeptical about what the response is? So
Yeah, because you really have to take those extra steps of looking into it. And what I have found, and maybe this should be like promising for people who have concerns about AI taking over creative fields, is that I do find it's unable to be fully very creative because creativity means originality, and AI is totally based on just pulling from things that already exist. So it will never spit you out something that's entirely original.
no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think there's something too, like uh, in that creativity aspect in a number of things that we as humans, we just have a certain innate element within us that has a slightly different piece. And I think one of the things that I use this example with people is, as people, we're emotional. And so we want to feel things in different aspects. And AI can be really helpful in that if you let it, but it also detracts from that. So I always say, all right, if on Valentine's Day I give my wife a card and I write this beautiful little message to her about what our love means and how wonderful she has been and all the importance that she has made in my life, and she looks at it, oh wow, this is fantastic. And then I go, yeah, AI wrote that, isn't that great? But I feel that same way. It doesn't hit the same as if I had written it. And so we have to be very careful about that.
Oh, absolutely. On that same point, what do you think about people using AI as their therapist?
Um, Again, this is a tricky situation. Um, so I think it has value for some people, particularly if it's if you're not necessarily depressed or in a have a significant kind of component. But if you want to, hey, help me, find some things that I can, de-stress about today. What are some activities that I can do, or as just a talking point to just say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I don't necessarily need you to respond, but just, kind of talk back to me. But to that point, there's been some really messed up kind of responses that certain individuals have because the way that AI is designed is it is there to agree with you. There are certain elements within that, and that isn't necessarily good from a therapist perspective, from somebody who is looking to really understand what's going on and what's wrong with them, various different things. And so I'm always very cautious to say, use AI as a therapist. Then I would actually, say, don't do that if you think it's anything that is serious at all. And even if it's not, I mean, there's been stories of where it leads people down the road to thinking that they have something wrong with them when they really don't, because that's kind of the way that it's designed to do. And so make sure that you're very skeptical of anything that comes back. And if you have anything where you think that it's serious, to see a trained professional. Don't use AI.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it's been useful for me for things like I had to clear something up with my like leasing office at my old apartment building. They wanted to charge me extra money, and so I asked it to write like a stern letter for me about why they shouldn't charge me this extra money. And for that it was fantastic, where it was
Yes.
like an emotional offload because it did a better job at writing a concise letter that wasn't filled with like the vitriol I was feeling at the time. So it did a good job for that. So I like those types of implications for it. What would you say are the types of ways people are using AI that could lead to cognitive surrender?
So, number one is when you use AI without any pre thought around what you're trying to do. So whether that would be if I have to write an email, and I need to respond to an email from my boss or from somebody else, and I just take that email, put it into AI, and say, hey, write a response to this. You're not thinking about it. You're not taking that moment to really have those thoughts around it. Anytime that you're using AI to make a decision and you don't take those extra steps to, all right, how am I understanding this? What are the implications for this for me? And really taking a deep dive into what it is that you're thinking as opposed to this is the best decision. And that can be anything from major decisions. People are putting things in about having relationships, or should I take this job, or other factors on there. And it can be a tool. It can provide you with information. But once it spits out here is the recommended decision, and you just go with it, then that's bad. But it can even be from like little things like what should I eat tonight to other factors that are they seem benign. And it's those little pieces that actually add up. And the research points to that. The more that you use AI, the more that cognitive deficiencies happen. So that you are, people who use AI sparingly, it has less of an impact than people who use AI. Sorry, that was an alarm. So the people who use AI, more, have it where it makes a stronger impact on their cognitive decline, their cognitive ability to really think strategically, to think critically about things. And people who use it less, it doesn't have that same impact. So,
Is there a way, do you think, for people to measure if it's had an impact on them?
oh, that's a great question. And this is the behavioral science side of things, right? Is that we are really bad at examining our own thinking process. We are very bad at understanding our own, what motivates us, what drives our behavior. If you ask people, they will tell you a surface level component, or they will look at the whatever is kind of top of the pile. They don't understand what's actually happening underneath. And so if there's a way to measure if you're having that happen to you or not is really difficult. And the other thing, and this is it, this doesn't happen. It's like, oh, I used AI to make a decision for me today. Now I have just dropped 10 IQ points. That's not how that works. It takes time, and it's a cumulative component where it is the process where it's, all right, I use it today, and I use it tomorrow, and I use it tomorrow, and every little bit, there's a little bit going on. And after a month or 2 months or 5 months or 6 months, now there's probably some definitive decrease in my ability to think in a critical or a more strategic way. But it's hard to see when those changes are so small that you don't notice them. So I wish I had a easy, like, oh, take this test and take it again in a month and you'll be able to tell. But I don't know if there's anything out there like that.
It sounds like maybe that's the next step on maybe fighting back some of this, is they should create some kind of evaluation. So maybe if someone suspects that they've been crossing a line, the line that we're like trying to find here, oh, I'm using it too much to offload. Let's perhaps make sure that this isn't, because I don't know enough about like the SAT, all the stuff that they used to make us take that like tested our abilities to think about stuff. Perhaps now there needs to be some kind of framework where if you suspect that you've been negatively impacted by AI, maybe you can sit down and take some kind of exam and have it be like a bit of a wake up call.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would, hope that there are people out there that are working on that, but I'm not sure. But that would be wonderful. I would love to be able to take a test, to go, all right, how much is my usage of AI? Because I use it, and but how much is it impacting me from that cognitive perspective? And again, to your point, I know this stuff is bad, and there are some parts where I'm actually going, oh, I really need to, do some thinking beforehand, but I don't have time. So it's easier. It's that how easy it is to use that makes it so kind of, it's that like, the witch with the candy. It's like, come here, little kitty, come on. So, yeah.
There's also the greater economic concern down the road, and I've heard this like kind of being talked about where maybe the plan of these AI companies is to get us hooked on it while it's free, get us dependent on it, and then start taking it away and charging for it the way that you would for like a utility.
hmm Yeah, there's lots of really good research that kind of shows that whole thing again with many of the tech in kind of innovations that have happened where it starts off free, they're subsidizing it to get you onto their platform to do all of these things, and then over time you get either inundated with ads or something. They have to make money somehow.
Right.
And so to your point, yeah, if I can get a big enough, uh, customer base that is addicted to this because of how easy it is and how dependent I am upon it, uh, then yeah, you're willing to pay for things that you normally wouldn't have paid for before. So,
I saw an article recently that talked about how certain companies that went ahead and laid off a lot of people and wanted to go ahead and replace them with AI, they're backpedaling now because they didn't realize how expensive the AI would be and how it actually didn't live up to their expectations as far as replacement of those actual employees. What do you think about that? Are jobs as in danger as people are saying they are?
so jobs are in danger. Um, but there are other jobs that will be created as a result of this. What that in the end is. I mean, there are different perceptions on that and different ideas of what that is. The pessimist in me says, "Ooh, I'm really worried," and in the long run, it's going to be, are we going to have just the people who run AI and the robots, and everybody else is going to be, doing just other menial jobs that don't have any meaning? The optimist on me is saying no. It'll free us up. It is you know the hope and dream of what the AI futurists are talking about is it'll take all the menial work away, and we will be able to focus in on the bigger picture and those types of things. In current day, though, to your point, companies are laying people off, or if they're not laying off, they're not hiring in, and most of the time the jobs that are being replaced right now are entry level positions, and particularly in computer coding, data analysis, in customer service. So a lot of places where people got their start. So out of high school, graduate college, your first job where, yeah, the work isn't all that exciting, but you're learning, you're understanding how things happen, how to code, what you need to do in order to make sure that the data is right and getting it in that spot. And those are the jobs that are disappearing, and they're harder to find. So there's not only is that a issue, but in the long run, I think for organizations, there's a potential. You're losing your bench, basically, if you think about it in a sports analogy. It's like, all right, my star players are out there, but my rookies who are there and that are learning, they don't necessarily play that much, but they get in and they practice and they do that. Well, you no longer have any of those people. So the next layer 5 years down the road who need to take over, who are then using AI potentially in the way that you want it, but they don't necessarily have the background or knowledge, the skill set to be able to, again, discern whether or not AI is doing the right thing or to direct it in the way that it needs to be directed. So I'm really concerned about that gap that's going to happen if we lose a bunch of those entry-level jobs where really it's training by fire, where people are put into jobs. You're dealing with angry customers, you're understanding how that happens and all those things, you're coding, you're doing data analysis, and yeah, not glamorous stuff, but it's where you learn and you figure things out.
Yeah, and it touches on the earlier point of if people are not getting those entry level jobs and they're not like overcoming the mental obstacles that come with those types of positions, then how are they going to mentally develop to the point where they can like do the jobs that are going to still require humans?
Yeah, and even just like understanding how workplaces work, right? I mean, that's a big part of those entry level jobs, is understanding it's different than school. You have different expectations, different accountabilities, different ways of interacting with people inside your team, inside the organization, outside the organization. And those are all things you pick up from just doing it and watching and being part of something and seeing what works, what doesn't. And so, yeah, I'm really kind of pessimistic about what that means in the long run. So,
Oh, me too. So, talking about finding ways to avoid, the types of assignments that we give AI that are going to lead to cognitive surrender. Do you think you and I can come up with maybe like a do's and don'ts list for how to use AI just for mundane tasks versus using it in a way that's going to like dull our natural skills?
and we can try. We can try. Again, we could probably just enter this into AI and it could give us a nice little list. But
Right.
let's try on our own. How about that?
So
So
using it for a list.
fine. I mean, if you have, prompted it and you kind of thought like, all right, here's what I want to do for this week and how I want to eat. Yeah, it can be really nice to be able to get, all right, if I want to do this type of dinner and here are all the ingredients I need for it that AI picks out, that'd be fantastic. I think that's a not a bad way of doing it. Um, so should you be the good side and I be the bad side? Should we do it that way? Like,
Sure, yeah. So
so on the bad side, I would say if you were to like, you know, again, we've used this example already, but respond, just allowing AI to create the initial response to emails for you. Yeah, it's an easy offload, and you go, wow, I just need to approve, this kind of response. But there is a big difference, a critical difference between approving a thought and generating one. So if you're allowing AI to respond to all your emails and you're just approving it, not necessarily the way of doing
okay, so editing good, writing bad.
it. First draft writing bad. Yes, yes.
So how about relationship advice?
Ooh. Um, in what way? So what kind of relationship, is it an issue, or is it determining where to go to dinner for a special date?
So I'll sell myself down the river for this example. I at one point was dating a guy who was like pulling away and showing really avoidant behavior. So I was talking to chat about, hey, this has been his behavior. And what I noticed is when I initially brought it up to the AI, it was doing the thing we talked about where it was being really overly positive and supportive and telling me that there was nothing to worry about. And after like a couple of weeks, when I was coming back to it and being like, hey, this is still going on, then finally I got it to admit, like, oh, this probably means he's not that interested, that this isn't going anywhere. It took like a few weeks to get there. So, what do you think as far as going to it for like an analysis on your partner's behavior?
I I think that's risky. I mean, I think there could be value in in trying to say, hey, here's the behaviors that I'm seeing. Look out at the research. What does the research say about these types of behaviors? That could give you kind of, here's some groundwork to look at. Oh, maybe here are some of the different things that shows. Like, could be like, oh, he is stressed because of something at work, or or he is pulling away because of this, or he has some other red or green flags, however you want to point to it, and that might be able to give you that list. But to use it to then, like, all right, analyze this relationship, that should be you, right? I think that should be, where is this relationship going? Well, here are some things. Now I can go in and explore, and I can think about that, and I should be the one. And even this is where you look, in the imperfect world that we used to all live in, this is where you talk to your friends. This is where you talk to a confidant, or, a mother or a father, or whoever it is that you can confide in, and kind of talk through that with them. That's one of the other things that AI is doing that I think is an unintended consequence. Sorry, I'm going off on a separate
it's
thing
great.
here, but it reduces our kind of need, and oftentimes the actual willingness for us to reach out to others, whether that be in a workplace, on my team. If I have a question about how to do something, it's much easier now to just go to AI, prompt that in, get the answer, and go on, where I used to ask a teammate, or ask my boss, or ask my mentor. Same thing around friends, on relationship issues. It's where we used to do that. That's part of what brings us closer as people, as individuals. It's what bonds us as human beings. And if we just outsource all that to AI, I think that's a negative.
I'm so glad that you made that point, because I think people don't think about it like that a lot. I think it's far more common to understand, maybe intuitively suspect that it's wearing away at your cognitive abilities. But I think that piece of it doesn't get talked about, is that it's also deteriorating your connections.
Yeah. And that's again, from a behavioral science research thing, right? The studies of happiness, the studies that, there's longevity studies on that Harvard did on well-being and different things. And the number one predictor of long-term happiness, satisfaction with life, is the number and the depth of the social connections that we have. If there's anything, I leave your listeners with, is make sure you are that you are actually working on those relationships, that you are, weeding the garden, that you are fertilizing that relationship, that you are going out and trying to make new relationships and building as many of those as you can, because that's going to be a long-term net benefit for everybody.
And part of nurturing those relationships is coming to those relationships with needing advice and needing, hey, I wrote this email. How do you think I should answer it? And I think a lot of us are people pleasers, or we feel like we don't want to burden someone by asking them for help. But at the end of the day, like, there's also been studies, I wish I remembered where to reference them from, but when you actually ask someone to do you a favor, you are bonding them to you, because something happens in our brains where, if we're like, oh, this person is coming to me and I'm helping them, I must really like them.
Yeah, it's the Ben Franklin effect. There's an effect that's called that, because Ben Franklin would go to people and borrow a book that he didn't even need, but he knew that if they lent him the book, they would actually be more likely to work with him, because obviously I lent him a book. He must be a good person, right? And there is this real, like, we get a dopamine hit when people ask us things that we can potentially help them with. Now, it can backfire if you're always being, oh my God, everything is negative, and you have to work through your issues with somebody. And, there's extremes on either end. But in general, we like helping other people. It's part, again, you talked to evolution, right? That's how we evolved, because if we weren't helping other people in our tribe, we kind of got ostracized. And if we got kicked out of the tribe, that's not good, right? That's a death sentence for most times. So yeah, we want to help people, and there's really great work with Nick Epley and some others about like just asking questions or talking with strangers or even talking with loved ones, going deep in conversations as opposed to just being surface. And what is always interesting, I think one of the most interesting parts of that research is the expectation that we have about how the other person is going to think, whether it's talking to a stranger on a train, whether it's asking your friend a deeper question as opposed to just like, hey, what about, the Bulls this week or, whatever sports game you're watching, but actually asking about how they feel. You're always really worried about how they're going to respond, and they don't want to have those conversations. The fact is they do. They are much more likely to really engage with you and enjoy that than we give kind of presence to. And so our expectations versus reality are always off.
Yeah, true. And just one more like little point to add to that of like coming to someone with a problem. When like the whole basis of all the 12-step groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff is that you be of service, like literally being of service. And I know religious organizations talk about this too. There is a through line that being of service is healing for somebody. So like you said, don't go overboard and ask somebody to solve your problems and always come at them with like negativity, but at the same time, don't be afraid to come to someone for a little bit of advice, because more than likely it's actually going to help you in your relationship with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So one more example of what AI could be helpful with versus detrimental with. How do you feel about using AI? Like, let's say I want to start a new business. I'm coming up with like marketing plans, or like reaching out to potential clients. Like, let's say I want to brainstorm. What's a good way to use it to brainstorm versus what's a way to use it to brainstorm that might lead to this cognitive surrender?
Yeah, so this is really a great question, because once again, AI is powerful, and so you can use it really well if you're starting a business and you want to like think about, all right, marketing plan. Do the initial thought process on this. So here is the type of business that I'm having. Here are the competitors that I have identified. Here is the niche that we want to go in, and then ask it questions about each of those. And so you can go in and go, how big is this market? Does this market, is it easy to get entry into? All the, whatever marketing questions that you want to start asking it. And same thing on competitors. Here's some competitors I've identified. Are there other competitors I haven't thought about? Who expands beyond that? What do these competitors, how well do they do things? Where are they missing? So you can get a lot of information. Again, do that first thought first and doing it that way. Where you don't want to go is say, hey, I want to do this type of business. Can you create a marketing plan for me? And, let's set up an agent that's going to be calling all of my customers right away. Well, I think in the long run that may not be the best use of it. But again, lots of really powerful ways of using it that can be helpful.
I like that distinction too of the don't do the initial outsourcing, but feel free to have it come in and be an editor like we talked about earlier, or to be like the R&D leg where it can go out and get you the statistics that you need in order for you to like carve the right path.
It's fantastic. Instead of having to do 100 different Google searches out there looking at different things, AI can do that all in an instant, and so it can compile all that data. So your point of being an RD, right, your research and development arm, fantastic. I had a friend who owns a design and build company, And he basically took his, strategic plan that they'd already put together. He listed in all his competitors. He was looking and taking in some market things, and he put it into AI, and he said, help me build out this, with multiple questions and multiple different things about that marketing plan. And he got back a really good one. He took it to his actual marketing, he has a firm that he uses, and he goes, how much would you charge me for this? And they were like, $25,000 typically. And they go, how accurate is it? You go, well, we do probably 85-90% of this is the same thing that we would have said. We would have done 10 or 15%. And so he just paid them to change the 10 or 15%, and it didn't cost nearly the $25,000 that they would have normally charged.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And that's why I think like both you and we're not trying to demonize AI with this conversation. We're just kind of trying to set up like the bumpers on a bowling lane of like, okay, here's where it's fine and not just fine, but like actually beneficial. But here's where it's important to keep an eye out for it so that it doesn't like come back and bite us in the ass. Because I know everyone's thinking, when and how is it going to bite us in the ass?
Yeah, and the thing is just going into this aware, right? And to your point of earlier when we said, oh, just knowing stuff isn't necessarily enough to actually change our behavior, but knowing stuff and putting constraints in or a plan in, or certain, like in behavioral science, we use if-then statements or if-when statements. Like if X happens, then I will do Y, right? And if you do that in advance, research shows that you're much more likely when X happens that you'll do Y than if you don't put that plan in place, or just even make that like if-then statement, that you'll more likely do Y if you put that in place. Same thing I think on here is understanding I need to use AI, but when I use it, I will use it this way. And I will always make sure that I think about, something, and I put something down on that piece of paper before I send it to AI to just give me those ideas. So.
Exactly. And that way we can kind of, without becoming absolutely reliant on it, we can like use it to help us as opposed to using it to let the AI companies like exploit us ultimately.
Exactly. So.
How can we apply behavioral science to make us feel more at peace?
Ooh, I love that question. Um, Behavioral science is this idea of understanding what drives us, what motivates us, what kind of gets us to do the things we do. So, from that idea of being at peace, it's being able to understand some of the mechanisms, the kind of things that always are there. And part of what behavioral science does is, we often think that we're very rational beings, and that, oh, if I make a decision and I will do X on this time and date, I will do it. And that's not how it works. We're emotional, we have various different things. But if you can help to develop out those habits and put systems in place that tap into that human side of who we are, then yeah, you can do that to find peace. So, for myself, I know that for me, I need to savor things more and the simple things. So I have done if-then statements around, like, when I eat breakfast, I will take a second to just pause. I don't care if it's Cheerios or if it's the most gourmet, eggs Benedict that I've ever had, but just pause to just like really allow myself to be in the moment and enjoy, whether it be Cheerios or this decadent eggs Benedict that I'm going to be eating, and just savor that moment and, think about it as opposed to just chowing things down and moving on. So.
Beautiful. Well, Kurt Nelson, if people want to learn more about what you're doing or work with you, where can they go?
So they can reach out, lanterngroup.com, can send a message there. LinkedIn, it's Kurt W. Nelson, and I am out there a lot with a lot of different articles that talking about AI and some of the cognitive surrender pieces that we talked about and some of the other aspects of that. So I'm always open to connecting with people there as well. So, and then also behaviorshift.shop is where a bunch of the consumer tools that we have. So we do journals and workbooks and various different things to help people set goals and make sure that they achieve those goals. So.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking to me today.
Thank you. It was so much fun. Appreciate it.
Of course. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye. All right, I'll stop the recording there.
Fantastic.
Awesome. I think, let's see where yours is. Yours is at 88%. So I think, just leave the browser open. Obviously, we can exit out of this, and then it should be done soon.
Yeah. Sorry about my alarm. I forget I'm supposed to do some PT stuff at 2:30.
Oh, no, that's totally okay. That's super easy to edit out. No worries at all. Well, thank you so much. Once this is out, I'll email you all the links so you'll have it all in like one email. Feel free to share it wherever you want, do whatever you want with it. And yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll have my team and we'll make sure that we promote it. So.
Sounds good.
All right.
Talk soon. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
All right, y'all. Hi. We only have 2 people left, which is, it's totally okay. Yo, how am I supposed to read people's responses when I'm in a damn friggin', I'm in a damn podcast. I gotta be a good podcaster first, yo. So I'm not gonna go back and read all of you. It's really amazing how nobody figured out, hey, I'm hosting here, so I couldn't chat. But I hope that if you're still here, that you got something out of that recording. It's going to be posted. The full episode will be posted in the next week or 2. And I'm going to give myself a little break before my second recording later today. So thank you again for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.